One of the main reasons Iboga is so effective at changing lives is people take the medicine, it processes through their liver into something called noribogaine, and noribogaine stays in the body longer than, most things.
Welcome to the Wild Herbs Podcast, where we unpack and uncover the healing properties of wild herbs so you can heal naturally with the plants beneath your feet. I am your host, April Punsalan, wild untamed plant lady, also a botanist, an ethnobotanist, and herbalist dedicated to teaching you how to heal with plants. If you want to learn edible and medicinal plants, you are in the right place, my friend. I am deeply honored to have Levi Barker on the Wild Herb Podcast. Today, you get to hear from Levi and his connection with the sacred plant Iboga. Levi Barker is a former tech entrepreneur who has been working on himself with the aid of the sacred African plant Iboga and other plant medicines for the last 17 years. After training for a 7-year period while managing his businesses, Levi listened to his soul and dedicated himself fully to Iboga. Now Levi leads wellness retreats with Iboga, and he is a teacher. So Levi, it is an honor to have you on the Wild Herb Podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on and the opportunity to share about Iboga with your listeners.
So you have this deep connection with this plant, Tabernanthe Iboga, and this is a native wild herb from West Central Africa. And I would love for you to share with us, because I am new to this plant, and many of the listeners likely will be too. Can you share with us, what is the sacred plant Iboga?
Wow, that's a pretty big question. It's a lot of things. Definitely, as far as I'm aware, it's kind of the most all-around healing plant there is. So I mean, it works on the mental capacity of humans. There's also physical recalibration of the brain for people. It does a lot of physical healing. It can definitely, show you the path forward and connect you with your intuition to know, what direction you need to go in life. So yeah, it's been quite possibly thousands of years it was discovered. And as people took Iboga, it was discovered by the Pygmy people in equatorial Africa. So Gabon is the primary country where Iboga is found, also the Congo and Cameroon. And the Pygmies discovered it and then started sharing it with some of the other tribal people in the area. And what they found as they took Iboga, and actually the word in some traditions, the word Iboga means to care for or healing wood. And what they found as they took Iboga is consistent messages kept coming through time and time again about what it means to be a human on Earth. And so that happens even today. So, at it, Iboga shows us who we are inside and really shows us what we want in life. And so, yeah, like I said, as they people took Iboga, this consistent messages kept coming through time and time again about how to be a human on Earth, like how do we deal with our mind, how do we speak to ourselves, how do we deal with our past relationships. And so, yeah, it's really a mental healing tool, a physical healing tool, and also a compass on the direction to go in life, which I can get into more. But it's a small shrub, at its biggest, and may get up to 3 or 4 meters tall. And so it's the root bark of the plant that has the medicine. All the other parts of the plant are used for different things. And so, yeah, typically it takes at least 7 years, 10 years for the alkaloids to be present, to be able to use it. And so there was recently nature.com, which is kind of the preeminent scientific journal out there. There's a Stanford doctor named Christopher Nolan that did a study I'm using Iboga, which is one alkaloid within the Iboga plant, to treat veterans with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And he called Iboga, or the Iboga alkaloids, the most fascinating molecule or chemical that he's ever seen, just because it works on so many different parts of the human mind and body.
Wow. So is Iboga a perennial? Does it come back
Yes,
every year?
yeah,
It is in the Apocynaceae family. At first, I thought it was going to be in the pea family, but it's in the family that like milkweeds are in, right?
is it? Yeah, you probably know better than I do, but yeah, I know the apostocyanine, if I how do you
Yeah,
say it?
yeah.
Yeah,
So that's the
yeah,
family, I believe, that has like Asclepius or butterfly milkweed, and it has like a white milky latex that comes out. When you pick the leaf, does
yeah,
it comes out?
yeah, it sure does.
Wow.
It sure does. Yeah, that family of plants are, yeah, some of the richest plants and different alkaloids, even, outside of Iboga. Yeah, that's interesting, other plants in that family.
So this plant, it is the root bark, the outer bark off. Do you use the inner bark or do you use outer bark?
Whenever you harvest Iboga, the best thing to do is just use some of the roots to let the plant keep going. But there's a skin on the outer side of the roots which you scrape off, and then the second layer of root bark kind of peels off from the main root in the middle. And so, yeah, you use that second layer of root bark, and then typically, if you're harvesting, you'll take the inner root and boil it and make tea out of it, which extracts the medicine out of it.
Extracts the alkaloids out
Yeah.
of the root bark. And wow. Do you have this rich connection with this plant on a very deep level? And I'm very excited to get into how this plant came across your path because I love hearing how plant connections happened. And obviously this is a plant that you are meant to work with as part of your life journey. But I would love, before we do that, talk a little bit more about the cultural history of this plant and its origins. And you said along the equator of Africa in Gabon, I believe, in the Bwiti tradition. Because at first, when I was reading about it, when I saw Bwiti, I thought this was the name of a tribe and countries in Africa or along the equator. But then I read a little deeper and I realized, no, this is actually considered the Bwiti is like a religion, or like, I don't even know if you would call it a religion, but a spiritual practice that involves the plant. And so could you share with us the spiritual discipline and a little bit about the people and the practice with the plant?
Yeah, sure. So, like I had mentioned, a couple of different groups and pygmy pygmy people in that area of Africa, and they were the first ones to discover it. And I know sometimes people think pygmy is, a derogatory term. You can call them the Babango or Baka people, but even in Gabon, among the Bwiti, they call them pygmies. Like I said, they had discovered it, probably many thousands of years ago, observing animals eating the root. So, Gabon after the Amazon, or Gabon, Congo, Cameroon area after the Amazon is the second biggest rainforest in the world. And so you got the gorillas there, elephants, and so several different animals will actually eat the roots of the medicine as well, like elephants, porcupines, rats,
Wow.
mangrove monkeys, which are the ones that have this really wild face and like kind of makeup on the face. But they discovered them eating it. At some point, they tried it and developed a tradition around it and kept it secret for who knows how long, and then eventually introduced it to some of the other tribes. And that is where the Bwiti grew. So the original Bwiti does come from the Pygmies. Then it was introduced to the other tribes and people, and it changed from there. each group put their kind of own style and ways of doing ceremony into it. And so, like you said, it is a spiritual path, first and foremost, was colonized by the French. And there was some group of Bwiti, in order to keep practicing, that they introduced Christian elements into the practices, kind of similar to Peruvian ayahuasqueros and some groups. They did that to be able to continue practicing Bwiti, whereas the Bwiti kind of deeper in the jungle, outside of practicing like they always have. And so, there's three kind of three main sets of Bwiti. There's the pygmy Bwiti called the Sumba. There's the Fang Bwiti, which is a big ethnic group in that area of Africa, but they're typically the ones that incorporate the religious aspects into it. And then there's Masoko Bwiti, which we practice using Iboga and other plants of the forest for healing.
Thank you. This plant has been used by the culture in Gabon and other places for, you said, 1,000, maybe 1,000 plus years, and was first discovered because animals were consuming it, which I find fascinating. It's a very useful way to know that you can work with a plant and not die. Is it really clear in Gabon, like, who the Bwiti people are? Are they living in close together? Are they in a certain part of the jungle?
It's not clear until they go into ceremony. So I think it's a pretty kind of secretive society. And so you could be, if you're out in a village and it's a village of Bwiti people, it's clear, but there's, times change. There's plenty of Bwiti living in Libreville, Gabon, which is kind of the main city in Gabon. And so many of those people kind of practice and don't tell others about it, or few people. So it's actually pretty secretive.
Secretive.
So,
okay.
It would be tough to tell unless they're in ceremony. If you're living next to a Bwiti temple, and you're within, range of that, then you'll know that place obviously is Bwiti, but a lot of people come from the outside to practice, say, in a family temple.
Thank you for sharing about Bwiti, the spiritual discipline. It's very fascinating, and it's all new to me. Can you explain how the Iboga, the plant, is used for rites of passage and initiation, and of course for healing? Can you share with us a little bit about how this plant is used in the Bwiti tradition for rites of passage?
Typically, for rites of passage, in the Mosoko tradition, which I'm part of, you don't use Iboga. A Bwiti initiation, it depends. There's many Bwiti that come into Bwiti later in their life, and then there's some that are born into it. And so, at any age, so we have a native Bwiti guy here with us now at Iboga Wellness, who was initially initiated when he was 7 years old. For many Bwiti people that grow up, with it in the family, it might be, 14, 17, 18, typically a little younger for women because they see as well that women mature a bit quicker. And so the Iboga, people from the West come to Iboga for kind of different reasons than people in Gabon. In Gabon, you're just you're more real with yourself. There's not so much, marketing around you, computers, social media. And so they kind of don't have the same confusion that some Westerners have about, what it means to, live in the life that you're living. And so one of the first uses for Iboga was for fertility, both for, men and women. And so that's a common one in Gabon that people come from for. Also, like, if there's some sort of spiritual, energetic thing going on with the family, people will get initiated in that in Gabon. And that also happens here in the West as well. Many things that get passed down to us through our family. That definitely, if you're in the womb with your mother and, her father is, say, for example, an alcoholic or just very angry, like that definitely leaves an imprint on the baby when it comes out. Iboga was for fertility, and that still happens today. It's not something that can necessarily, well, maybe it can be quantified by science with epigenetics, but when we're a baby inside the womb, if there's a lot of anger within, our parents or a lot of stress, we come into the world, and some of that can definitely, be sent with us. So a lot of people also come to Iboga Wellness to kind of break the cycles of family history, whether that's alcohol, anger, depression, anxiety. And so that's the biggest kind of core of people that come here to Iboga Wellness. In Gabon, there's also a lot of physical healing that happens, and the Bwiti talk about Iboga being the master teacher. And so if you know Iboga well enough, it led the Bwiti people to all these other plants, herbs, and remedies that can be used for these other ailments, or memory, or anything that you could imagine needing a medication from. It helps them find these other herbs and plants that can be used for whatever's going on, malaria. And so, yeah, but it definitely is, coming into oneself spiritually. And once you get your initiation done, it's definitely, a fresh step in life. Like, you're not going to be the same person. With Iboga, you're always still you, but you're just more aware of, the world, around you, nature. And so yeah, go ahead.
Fine-tuned. I'm very fascinated with how it has been used for fertility, and I'm wondering, I would love to hear your perspective. Do you think that the Iboga medicine, the plant, helps to align the woman so then a child can come into her body more, like cleansing? Not so much it's going to heal hormonal imbalances, but it's more working on a spiritual, energetic level?
Yeah, I think there's both of those happening. I've seen it many times through clients that have come through here that say can't get pregnant, or some women come and they don't have a period, or a very erratic period, and have Iboga, and it kind of comes back on cycle. Or people that have been trying to have a baby for a long time but just couldn't. That's something to be left for science. Like, I've observed it, but I don't know exactly what's happening. But that's definitely the next kind of stage for Iboga. First started, like I said, with the pygmies in Gabon. Then they shared it with other tribes, and then eventually Iboga made its way to the West through one of my teachers who actually came to Costa Rica about 18 years ago. Yeah, it's probably been 20 years ago now. He was the first guy to come and share the medicine from a Bwiti context with Western people. And so beyond that, now the next stage is for, the actual medicine in Iboga to help people who would never actually take Iboga. And so, it's a touchy thing, but there's definitely people out there looking at the alkaloids within the Iboga plant for other ailments. So there's kind of an underground movement of people that use Iboga or Ibogaine for like Parkinson's treatment.
Wow.
We definitely, like, neurologically taking Iboga. It helps with a lot of neurological symptoms. So people, yeah, like I said, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, neuropathy. We got a lot of people that have been coming through that have stress-induced like headaches and just tension on their face, or jaw movement that can't stop. We had one guy that had a traumatic brain injury that was here a few months ago and had this big lump on his head. And after the 2 ceremonies, the lump was gone, a lot of his brain fog was gone. And so there's something in Iboga that may need to be amplified, to give to the general population. But I think in the next 5-10 years or so, there's going to be many medications that come from the actual Iboga plant for people that will never, come here to experience Iboga in this setting.
That is interesting that it helps heal neuropathy. And so, do you have any insight on how or why you think it heals neuropathy or neurological disorders?
I don't. We have like a biochemist scientist here that helps us out while he's studying Iboga. He would be able to answer that a lot better. But whenever you take Iboga, you definitely feel it moving through the nervous system. A lot of people liken it to kind of brain surgery almost. When you take it, people's toes and fingers can get a little bit twitchy. So it's definitely going through the nervous system and kind of refiring things back up. I know some people with like Lyme disease deal with neuropathy. We've had many people come through for, maybe not their primary reason, but dealing with a lot of Lyme symptoms, which are really varied. Lyme seems to affect so many different parts of the body. And so, there's definitely alkaloids within Iboga that can help people, really, lessen their symptoms, or for some people even kind of eliminate them.
That is fascinating. It seems like it's a plant that really helps with alignment. Like it's going to help align the systems, maybe the different body systems.
Absolutely.
And I guess there's other plants or, alkaloids like berberine, which helps promote the regeneration of the nerves. And so I wonder, or it's anti-inflammatory too. And so I bet Iboga has, and you mentioned this, I believe already, that it has anti-inflammatory properties. But anyhow, that's so fascinating. How this plant, these alkaloids can really help align the nervous system and maybe help it regenerate some. And so how, go ahead.
I would say, it's truly a plant that kind of works on all 3 levels of our being. So when we're born, we come into this world, we have our mind, body, and as we view it in the Bwiti, our soul, or maybe in the West, our higher self, or our truth. It truly is a plant that works on all 3 levels. And so, when those things can be connected back together and aligned, it gives people a fresh start in life. Say things happen to us through childhood, injuries. We have, mental patterns that are kind of passed down to us from our parents, or for how we view the world. And Iboga can definitely just break through those patterns and habits and like bring everything back together. And when that happens, then people have a fresh start to move forward with clarity on where they want to go from there.
No, that's important medicine. It's like helping you align to the divine will. So how did this plant find you? How did you and Iboga meet? How did Iboga find its way to you? And maybe you can tell us a little bit how this plant has changed your life.
Yeah, sure. So some of the listeners may have heard of ibogaine, which is one alkaloid within the Iboga plant, and ibogaine is well known for being one of the few things that can help people with when they're in actual acute opiate withdrawal. So through my 20s, I had broken my wrist snowboarding, got prescribed Percocet, and then went through like a 10-year addiction through that time. And at one point, my a good friend of mine mentioned that I should try Iboga, and this was probably 17, 18 years ago or so. And so I was living in Nicaragua at the time and actually did a home detox with Iboga, which definitely isn't recommended, and got through that part of it. And then about a year later is when my first teacher, his name is Maginda, came to Costa Rica and started the first traditional based Iboga retreat in the West. And so, a lot of people would, really like listeners to know is when they hear, even within plant medicine circles, people that work with ayahuasca or mushrooms and they know about Iboga, it kind of has this perception that, oh, that's, an anti-addiction tool, which it definitely is. And it's not even, just substance addiction. We get plenty of people that, eating disorders, people addicted to, say, sex or porn or the internet, just all around, it's kind of the ultimate bad habit breaker. And so, really want to get out there that, Iboga does help with addictions, but it's so much more than that. There's many other things that it helps with, pretty much any kind of mental thing that we deal with. There's the physical healing properties, like I said. And so I used it initially, like I said, at home, and then met this Bwiti shaman that came to Costa Rica and started having ceremonies with him and just really fell in love with Iboga. Saw, hundreds of people come through for a wide variety of different issues and continue to get healing and change their life. And so at some point, like you kind of said in the intro, I was running a business at the time, but knew that, my love for Iboga was super deep just for what it had done for my life and wanting to share that with other people. And then eventually took the leap. And that's around that time is when, so Iboga Wellness Center was started by a mentor and a friend of mine, Gary Cook. And so we've been around about 10 and a half years, and I've been with Gary about 10 of those. And so that's, kind of where it started. So I continued training at some point, went to Gabon, got my Bwiti initiation done, and then at that point received the blessing to actually give somebody medicine. And so I had about a 7-8 year period of actually working with Iboga, working with people in retreats before actually ever giving anybody else Iboga. And then when it was my time to serve people medicine, it was kind of like starting from the beginning again. It just makes you look at yourself in a different way when you're the one actually giving people Iboga. Like, you have to be very aware of, your own being and how you're thinking, your own energy within yourself, helping people. Like, you just have to live a clean life in order to serve this medicine to people. And so Iboga constantly makes you look at yourself, and improve yourself.
It sounds like it was definitely divine timing and divine will, because right when your mentor, Mark, opened the center, it was only like a half a year after you joined the center. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And you're being in Costa Rica and meeting what was his, Muginda, meeting Muginda, and being able to meet a shaman from the place of origin, I feel is such a blessing. And then going, when you went, can you share with us a little bit about the Bwiti initiation? When you went to Gabon for the initiation, what stands out in your memory as some of the really important things that you had to go through to be able to serve the medicine?
The main thing is like really knowing yourself and really working out your own healing. And that's with the Bwiti and Gabon, they can kind of see through you in some respects and know where you're at on your path. Interesting story. I mentioned Gary, who started Iboga Wellness Center. His son also served Iboga for a period. And one time his son got onto a plane going back home. And this African guy came up to the person sitting in the seat next to him and asked, "Hey, would you mind trading me seats so I can talk to my friend here?" And the person said, "Yeah, I'll trade you seats." And this African guy sat down, and he ended up being a Bwiti shaman as well from Gabon. And the guy said, "Well, I could," and Jeff, Gary's son, said, how did you know I worked with Iboga?" He's like, I could see it on you. And
Wow.
yeah, yep. And so yeah, the the Bwiti essentially work with, the forces of nature. So during a ceremony, they're building up all this energy, all this good energy for you to heal and then fill you up with strength so you can take it back home and use it in your life from there going forward. And so the medicine is definitely part of it, but there's also this huge group of people that are doing this, huge ceremony for you. So it's very humbling at the same time. People are there 2 or 3 nights straight for you to do this thing. And so yeah, you just really appreciate it while you're there. And I mean, they really work like the Bwiti people have some of the greatest stamina in the world. Like they can literally go for 4 nights straight without sleeping, like doing ceremony.
Wow. And so when you do an initiation, is there a number of nights that you have to do ceremony, or do they decide based on where you're at on your journey?
Yeah, it varies by the tradition. Um, Typically you have at least like so last time I was in Gabon, we did about 50 hours straight. Then we had a night's sleep, and then we did like another 16, 20 hours. There was also a couple days prior to the actual ceremony where they would do purges on us, smoke bath,
Mm.
different cleansings, like kind of preparing us and cleaning us to be able to accept the Iboga and allow the Iboga to go as deep as possible. But yeah, you kind of have
Mm.
to, I definitely recommend for most people like experiencing Iboga first, and then, at some point going to Gabon to do it, because it'll very much try you, like, in a traditional ceremony, you're sitting up for, 2 days. Like there's different things you do and dance, and there's different things you have to do, but you have to sit up and have your eyes open the whole time. Like if you close your eyes, they'll come by and kind of swat you, like pay attention. You can't like
Wow.
cross your legs or cross your arms or anything, block yourself in that way. In fact, we had a break at one point the last time I was in Gabon. I'm like, oh God, thank you. And went to lay down just on the floor of the temple. And they came over and got me. They're like, that's not how you lay down. And they would get down on the ground and show me exactly how I had to lay while resting. And so yeah, it's pretty strict. And the reason it's strict is because they want to make sure the young people who pass this on and keep it going, like essentially keep it the same and it doesn't shift, and it's been kind of the same as it has been since the beginning. And there's definitely shifts that happen, it's a malleable thing over long periods of time, but there's kind of the necessary components that you have to maintain within the ceremony. So that's kind of like us here at Iboga Wellness. It's not like going to a full initiation in Gabon, but there's certain things that you need to have in place, certain tools that have to be there in order to serve Iboga in the proper way and keep people safe physically, keep them spiritually safe, and allow them to go inside themselves and really get what they came for. That's the most important part. And thankfully, I feel like we do a really good job of that. Like it's very rare when somebody leaves disappointed from this experience, and we have
Mm.
people come from all over the world to experience this medicine. Even people have come from Africa to see us, which is kind of interesting.
Thank you for sharing that. Some of the parts of the ceremony that Bwiti hold sacred. And so do you sit or do you stand? during ceremony?
With us,
Yeah. And or with the Bwiti and you.
with a Masoko Bwiti ceremony, yeah, you're sitting on
Okay.
a bench. So we had a couple of people go over and get initiated, I don't know, within the last 6, 8 months. And we told them like, get some like biker underwear with like a little gel pad under your butt, because that's one of the hardest parts of it is like, sitting there, you eventually start going side to side trying to find a comfortable spot on your butt.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, and you, like I said, you have to keep your eyes open. And so here for
Wow.
people are typically experiencing Iboga for the first time. People are able to lay down in a mattress in our ceremony space, have an eye mask, close their eyes. And so this was a system developed by Maginda for Westerners, to kind of get the most out of the medicine and be introduced to it. And so I do think it's important for Westerners to be able to close their eyes, go inside. Like a Bwiti ceremony is very much a barrage of the senses, and it is here as well, but just not in the same intensity. And so, yeah, allowing people to close their eyes, go inside themselves, start exploring themselves. And so, typically during a ceremony here with Iboga, on the first ceremony for people, that's kind of when it has to do the deepest digging. And so people take the medicine, eventually they start feeling it laying down, and just things start moving, mentally, it's moving through their body. A very common thing is the mind goes into overdrive and you just start flashing through these random thoughts very quickly, which can last quite a long time. And that's actually how Iboga cleanses the mind. And so we
Mm.
encourage people like, you don't have to pay attention to those thoughts or try and make sense of them. That's just how Iboga goes through and cleans the mind. And but yeah, a lot happens. Like the senses are definitely up to 10. The mind starts racing for a while. It's very deep in the body. People kind of get off balance. And then later on, usually we have people in the ceremony area till sunrise the next day. And then we get them back to the room for some quiet time. And so all the things that have been moving around during the night, eventually kind of those things settle and slow down. And then the emotional release process starts happening. And so how we view it here, essentially, everybody gets three things. The Iboga cleans the mind and recalibrates the brain. There's a deep emotional purge that happens, whether that's beliefs or, things that have happened to us in the past. And then we get like, kind of like you're saying, like a spiritual alignment happen within ourselves, and all three things come back together in balance. And then that's what, you may have heard of Iboga being called like a reset in life for some people. And it definitely is. Like, we have clarity on the next steps. Here's what we need to do for ourselves. Here's what I need to work towards. And so then it gives people a chance to make that happen and really break the cycle of whatever's going on in their life. We definitely get into habits that can be very tough to break, especially mental habits. And so, yeah, Iboga allows people a chance to step back from that and kind of apply a new way of being in their life.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us. How do you think Iboga help the Western world, and who do you think should come to the Iboga Wellness Center in Costa Rica? Because I forgot to mention, Levi is leading the Iboga retreats in Costa Rica at the Iboga Wellness Center, which there will be a link to at the bottom of the show notes. So definitely check out the center. And who listening do you think maybe should come? And why do you think this plant is important for the Western world?
Yeah, yes. So it can definitely help a lot of people, but it's really important that people really want to come. In the past, occasionally we've had people come because their parents or their spouse kind of give them the ultimatum, like, get it together and go do this and then come back and be better. So it's very important that the decision comes from somebody themselves. But yeah, it's good for a whole host of Western problems. I mean, I can name some of the lists, but the biggest ones, like I said, are people, dealing with depression, anxiety, PTSD, bad habits or addictions, trauma in their past, unfortunately, a decent percentage of women, and including men as well, that come, have some sort of sexual abuse or trauma in their past. So Iboga is really a beautiful tool for letting the past go and bringing you back into the present and taking care of the present moment. Those things include a wide percentage of the Western population. Also, Iboga just isn't for people that are kind of, at their wits' end in life. Like Iboga is really a life advancement tool, and a life improvement tool. And so I would encourage people to think of it in that way, as a tool to just move forward in life. Like in Bwiti, we talk about the two most important things in life are knowing ourselves and knowing what we want. Because when we know those two things, there's no more confusion in life. We know who we are. We know what we're putting our effort into, what we're working towards to go and get for ourselves. And so, Iboga is definitely a very, very deep dive into knowing who you are, how your mind works, how your past is affecting you. And so once people can get that part out of the way and then see the clarity on the path forward, then it's just a matter of putting in the effort to go and get it. And so, yeah, really at its core, it's just a life improvement, a life advancement tool.
Amazing, amazing plant. And what an amazing journey you've had with this plant and serving this medicine and helping heal, helping serve as a facilitator for the plant to heal. From your experience, I know you've witnessed a lot of transformations. Is there anybody that you think shouldn't do the medicine? And I know you touched on anybody that is being forced to, that doesn't really want to. As far as like someone who maybe has psychosis, or there's a history of schizophrenia in the family, or bipolar, people that maybe have more fragile mental situation.
Yep. Great question. Yeah, I do think it's beneficial with possibly being people dealing with schizophrenia, but for something like that, I would definitely encourage them to do that in Gabon and not somewhere in the West, just because they know how to deal with that in a better way. But it's individual. We've definitely had people that have had bipolar here that we can accept. It just depends exactly. Like we'd want to speak with people, know what's going on. Some people can just be depressed and the doctor tells them they're bipolar and then they accept that. And that's what they, excuse me, and that's what they label themselves as. You do have to be careful. People have to have be in decent condition, especially in the heart, so they can't have arrhythmias or any major heart issues. So if people, are first looking into, say, Iboga or Ibogaine, if they go out there and research, they'll see that there has been some deaths. As far as I'm aware of, all of those have happened in kind of a clinical setting with people going through an acute detox, drug detox. And I think part of that problem is in the medical kind of clinical settings that they work in, they dose people with Iboga or Ibogaine based on their body weight rather than by observation on where they're at in the process. So I think some of those people just got way too much medicine. And I think a lot of them involved benzodiazepines, kind of like Xanax or Valium or something like that. Those medications don't mix at all with Iboga. Like we don't accept anybody that's, they have to have a long period without benzodiazepines. Also, you can't come to Iboga taking SSRI medications and a whole host of other medications. So it's a bit case by case, but yeah, it's a very deep physical cleanse, and so people need to be in decent shape to be able to go through the process. But with that said, people are in decent shape, don't have any contradicted medicines, then it's relatively safe. Thankfully, here in the last 10 and a half years at Iboga Wellness, we've never had like a true medical emergency where we had to like rush somebody to the hospital or anything like that. And so I hope to keep it that way by screening properly. Everybody that comes here has to get an electrocardiogram at some point if they're at all
Wow.
concerned with their heart. We have them get it beforehand. If they're not aware of any heart issues, they can get it here with us with our doctor. And so before the ceremony, our doctor comes by, gives people a checkup, and does an electrocardiogram on people just to make sure there's no unknown issues that somebody wasn't aware of. And so, yeah, no, we take that seriously. We want to keep people safe like we have thus far. And with that said, we've had many people come through in their 70s, even a few in their 80s, and experience this medicine.
Do you notice anything different with the people that being later in their life?
It affects them a bit more physically. So typically the day after, like it takes them a bit longer to recover. Iboga can definitely affect your balance. And so people get a bit more off balance if they're older, kind of in the middle of the process, like say the day after the ceremony, typically isn't a fun day for people. Like this is the day where things are being released and coming out. And so people are very negative with themselves or have fears, that's going to be coming into their consciousness. And that's just part of the releasing process and how it has to happen with Iboga. So we definitely prep people well on to expect that. Like, look, if you're coming for depression and your mom told you all your life you're no good and you believe you're no good, that's gonna probably come up at some point. Expect it, but understand that that's how Iboga gets things out. Like, so as Gary would say, who I mentioned, the founder of Iboga Wellness, things in our life come through the front door and they leave through the front door as well. And so when they're leaving, we're going to be aware of them to some degree. But then once they get through that part of it, physically recover, get some sleep, just wake up and things have shifted for them. They find themselves thinking differently. If they've been really negative with themselves, they find themselves catching themselves before they allow that negative thought to come inside and start affecting their present moment. Because thoughts, we don't have to allow every thought to affect us. If we do, it would drive us nuts, or that's when depression and anxiety start coming in. And so Iboga really teaches people how to manage their own mind and what to do with thoughts. And we teach them while here as well. So they come into this day after recovering and just kind of with a fresh slate. And so it's very important. Things are cleaned at that point. It's very important to keep it clean and start feeding yourself with positive thoughts or, the direction that you want to go. And so, it's really coming into life with a second chance.
So you're at Iboga Wellness Center. Your retreats are 8 days and you're leading these retreats. Can you tell us, maybe why 8 days and one of your favorite parts of the retreat?
So there's 7 nights, 8 days. 2 of those days, the arrival and departure day, are kind of half days. The reason that there's 7 nights is because we do 2 ceremonies during the week, and you definitely need the recovery time. So with other medicines, say ayahuasca or mushrooms, you kind of go through the experience and bounce back relatively quickly once they're done. Iboga can definitely be, at least 12, 14 hours. For some people, it can last 24 hours or even longer, 30 hours. And so you need the time in between. People need the time after the Iboga to be with themselves and just be there and allow the medicine to process through. So we do 2 of those ceremonies. We do a couple of nature outings during the week. Go to a beautiful beach, go to a river. We also go to the river another time and do a traditional Bwiti cleansing in the river, which is, doesn't involve Iboga, but it's a very significant and important part of the week. And for a lot of people, that's definitely a shifting point. When I first heard of them, they go dunk me in the water. Like, I don't need that. I need Iboga, but it actually very much works. And so it's a process of kind of connecting with nature and allowing, asking nature to help you leave certain things behind and call in the things that you do want in your life. And so for many people, it's a very significant point in their life. And so I would say, it's all pretty good. People kind of come around at their own time. Everybody, digest and processes the medicine at a different time. And so, I mean, my favorite part is once people recover, come back around and start seeing the shifts within themselves and in their being, then that's definitely my favorite part.
Mm. You touched on how, people recover faster from ayahuasca and psilocybin. And I know we're going to wrap up, but is there anything else you want to share about how this plant, this master plant, this plant medicine compares to other plant medicines, such as maybe ayahuasca or San Pedro?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, so I'll first say that I've gotten a lot out of other plant medicines as well. I started with Iboga, was my first master plant, but then, had experiences with other plants, including, ayahuasca, San Pedro, Wachuma, mushrooms. And, Iboga is kind of in its own class. Rather, it can be psychedelic for some people. For other people, it's just not. It's more like a healing experience rather than, this, psychedelic journey. So Iboga's not so much concerned with giving us a psychedelic show or presentation. It's more concerned with the healing process, and that happens through kind of the three things I mentioned: the cleansing of the mind, the recalibration of the brain, um, the emotional purge that happens, and the recalibration of our spirit and being coming together. And so it's a lot longer lasting. Like, typically people are feeling it pretty good for at least 16, 18 hours. Um, let's see what, it can be very visual for some people. For other people, it's not. Some of the deepest healings kind of happen when people actually have a quiet mind during the night, during the ceremony, but the medicine is very heavy in their body. And so they go through the night like that. And then the next day, just a deep emotional purge happens, and everything that they don't need anymore kind of comes out and starts being released through them. And so, there's definitely plenty to learn, and all those plants can help us. But Iboga is definitely kind of like a healing plant. And that's not to say the others aren't. They definitely are, but definitely the focus is on healing with Iboga and just improving our lives.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing it. And it's been such a wonderful podcast because I've never, talked with anyone about Iboga. And this is my first, introduction to Iboga. And I believe that there are these plants, these plant allies that are here for us to keep us on our path and keep us aligned with divine will. Do you think that Iboga, like in the Bwiti, do they do it like every couple of months to stay aligned? Or is it more like a once a year thing? Or do you have a recommendation for frequency of the medicine?
I mean, probably 85, 90% of people that come here, it's a one-time thing for them.
Mm.
Definitely some people get called back to have more Iboga. I mean, it'll definitely continue to improve people's lives, but typically we recommend, having, at least a year in between Iboga sessions, because there's one of the unique things about Iboga is, once the acute effects of the medicine stop, that's not the end of it. One of the main reasons Iboga is so effective at changing lives is people take the medicine, it processes through their liver into something called noribogaine, and noribogaine stays in the body longer than, most things. So there can be, a 1 to 3, 4 month period where this Ibogaine is slowly dripping out in people's lives as they get back home and living their regular lives. And so it continues to guide them, be kind to themselves, watch their thoughts, remind them what they're working towards, where they're going. And so it's a very, very long experience. So there's, especially the first month afterwards, we really encourage people to really set the stage and integrate the new habits and ways of being that they want to be. And if they can do that, which a lot of them do, then it, kind of forever shifts their life from that period. Definitely, if you look, say, on our Google reviews or something like that, like a lot of people say it's the most significant thing they've ever done for themselves in their life. So, yeah, it's most people it's one time. Then there's other people that get called back and come in a year or 2 or 3, come back. In the Bwiti, there's many ceremonies for all kinds of things, and all of them don't involve Iboga. So there's Bwiti weddings, ceremonies. If somebody's dealing with a certain problem, some of them use Iboga, but others definitely don't. So it's kind of a way of life for them rather than this one experience that they're going to have.
Thank you so much for sharing about this plant, and your life journey with this amazing master plant. There's so much more I could ask you, but I want to honor your time and I want to honor the listeners' time. Although if they're like me, which I know a lot of listeners are, they probably could listen for another hour, because this is very fascinating when you are diving into a plant that can change your life and realign your mind, body, and spirit and help you align your life with the divine. And so I feel like Iboga, that realignment and that shift probably can help somebody connect and realign with the divinity and the divine will. And so then your life is a lot more easeful and purposeful and not as many roadblocks and resistance. When we get out of alignment, we can lose that connection with the divinity, and that disconnect between our will and the divine will, which is really one, can become severed. So thank you for sharing all your knowledge, and thank you for being a facilitator in this healing process.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share Iboga with your audience. And that's definitely the main reason for being here. When people hear things like this, usually there's a couple people that will then research it more and really need something like this in their life. And so through podcast and things like that, people really shift their life through that. And so, yeah, thank you for having the platform to allow Iboga to grow.
It's truly a blessing. I'm going to put a link to the Wellness Center, but can you tell everybody where in Costa Rica the Wellness Center is located and how often you lead the Iboga retreats?
Typically, we have 2 retreats per month. We're located in the southwest zone of Costa Rica. So, yeah, really beautiful area in the mountains. Maybe when I do give you some shots of some Iboga, you'll be able to see the area around here. But yeah, it's really magical. Yeah, we do retreats twice per month. And yeah, people fly into San Jose, the main airport within Costa Rica.
Maybe one day my path will lead me there. I definitely think it's amazing how we connected, and I hope to meet you one day in person.
Yeah, no, I think we can make that happen. Yeah, no, I'll definitely be in touch with you. Your love for plants and herbs, have that, obviously I'm a Iboga focused, but we have that connection that way. And so, yeah, if you want to come at some point, we'll definitely find a way to make it happen for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Levi. And thank you for everyone listening. I know you love this podcast as much as I did. Definitely go to the show notes and click on the Iboga Wellness Center. I know that there are plant allies out there that can really help you along your path. Before we go, I'm super excited to let you know that registration for medical botany opens up September 9th, And the course starts September 16th. And the amazing thing about learning medical botany is that you will understand the traditional knowledge of many wild herbs across the world, its ethnobotanical history, combined with what modern science has taught us about these wild herbs, and of course, botany, and how to identify the medicinal plant families across the world and how to connect with them to improve your health along your own personal health journey. So I really hope to see you in there. All right, many blessings, everyone. Bye. Stay wild. Stay human.